All right, we're rolling on week 8 of the college football season. We've got 3 best bets coming your way, 3 big game breakdowns, couple of big favorites you might want to consider betting this week. And as always, a couple of dogs that should be included on this week's card for you. And we're going to do it with 3 of the best at wagertalk.com. And we are going to dive in right off the bat with double R1L, Mr. Steve Merrill, who is going to talk about a game not too far down the road from me, in fact, a little UTSA taking on the FAU Owls here, a little home dog action. Merrill, how you looking at this one?
These are two mid-major programs, if you will, that have been pretty successful in recent years. Not quite as much so this year. They're both exactly 3-3 straight up as they head into this game. But I think there's some value with the home dog, Florida Atlantic. First of all, I don't think they should be a home dog. I run a database simulation, 10,000 games. Average victory is 2.5 points for Florida Atlantic, not the other way around. So I think the wrong team is favored in this game. Let's keep an eye on it and see if we can find more threes. As I check the Wager Talk live odds screen here on Thursday afternoon, the consensus line is showing 2.5, but there's several threes out there at some of the Vegas books. Offshore and around the world, more 2.5s, but Circa, South Point, Superbook, all at +3. So that is a number that's available. So I like Florida Atlantic. I like them more at +3 or more. So keep an eye on this line. If you can get a +3, I'd play it sooner than later. If not, wait. This game doesn't kick off once again until Saturday evening. First of all, database simulation, as I said, has Florida Atlantic winning outright. I run other projections and models as well, and several of them have Florida Atlantic also as a straight-up winner, and more importantly, have them winning the yardage battle in this game. And from a matchup perspective, these are two teams that have struggled to throw the ball this season. But Florida Atlantic has been a little bit better defensively, just 23 points, 5.3 yards per play allowed. Texas San Antonio is allowing 28 and 5.5. So two below average offenses. I'll take the better defense at home getting points, especially if we can get this line up to that key number of +3 or more by Saturday evening.
All right, Steve, appreciate that. We're heading over to Jeff Michaels next. But before we do, and he's got a Big 12 game he's going to break down for us, do want to remind you, if you're new here, may I make the suggestion to Wager Talk TV, and college football content is what you are searching for. Nobody's got more of it than we do. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Give us the thumbs up here. And of course, you'll have access to all the daily college football content, from game matchups and previews to best bets all week long. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. As Jeff Michaels in the house, you're going to look at West Virginia hosting Oklahoma State, the Cowboys. What are you looking at in this matchup for us here, Jeff?
West Virginia really looking better here than they have in recent years. That defense is looking absolutely stout. There's no question about it. And from two teams that really have been trending to the under this season, last week was an explosive game for both offenses, and definitely a below average game for both defenses here. I mean, Oklahoma State had a combined 71 points last week. They put up 39 against Kansas, but they did allow Kansas to put up 32 themselves. West Virginia, 80 combined points in their games. They matched that OK State number, put up 39 points themselves, and allowed that Big 12 newcomer Houston to walk away with a win and put up 41 points there. So, I really am looking for these defenses to bounce back. Obviously, West Virginia has had the edge on the defensive side, but you look at these two teams, West Virginia has been very reliant on their rushing offense, and it has been impressive. But you look at the pass offenses of these two teams, and it's actually closer than one may expect. The difference, you look at yards per game, and you're obviously going to see a big differential there between these two teams. But that mainly comes from the fact that West Virginia is only attempting 25 passes per game, and OK State's putting up 40, the second most in the conference. But you compare what they've done through those numbers, West Virginia is actually putting up 7.7 yards per attempt. Oklahoma State is the worst in the conference with just 6.1 yards per attempt, and they've thrown 7 TDs to 4 interceptions. West Virginia actually has the edge in that ratio there too, with 8 passing touchdowns and just 3 interceptions here. You look at these two teams, obviously familiar foes being in the conference. Oklahoma State has won and covered 7 out of the last 8, but West Virginia pulled the upset last year. But the biggest thing here is going to be 8 out of the last 10 meetings between these two teams head to head, regardless of site, have stayed under that total. We're sitting at 50 right now. And I do think that West Virginia has the edge here. Both teams are fighting for their conference rankings. Both teams are 4-2. Both teams are 2-1 in conference play. And I do think West Virginia steps up here. We were actually talking before the show, and one-sided offenses are something I sometimes look to play against. And West Virginia being so reliant on their rushing game makes me think that Oklahoma State can really come in and plan for that rush attack. I think Oklahoma State's defense shows up here too, and West Virginia's defense needs a bounce back. So I'm going with the total here, and I'm looking for it to stay under that number this weekend.
All right, Jeff, great stuff. As always, we welcome in Jimmy Adams. And Jimmy, you're going to look at a game that might be just the cure for insomnia people are looking for, is Iowa getting ready to take on Minnesota. I don't know if this total can go any lower, but what are you looking at in this matchup?
You may want to skip this one if offense is your thing in college football. But all kidding aside, laying points with the Hawkeyes is just not something I'm all that interested in. We know the defense is good. The clients and I backed them last week against Wisconsin. That was a nice ticket to cash. They enter with the 27th ranked defense in total defense in the nation. But Minnesota has a defense of their own, coming in at 63rd after giving up a bunch of points to Michigan. So they're probably better than that number. And the Gophers are also coming off a bye, extra time to prepare. I don't think they'll have any trouble stopping Iowa this week on the offensive end. Quarterback Deacon Hill had 37 total yards passing last week versus Wisconsin. He's just been terrible. And on top of that, he's his tight end as well. I believe he's out for the season. So Cade McNamara not being around is a huge loss, especially for an offensive coordinator that has it in his contract that he has to score 25 points a game or whatever it is. Dead last in the nation in total offense, not a team I want to be laying more than a field goal with. I'm not here to make the case that Minnesota has a good offense either, because they don't. But they are second in the Big Ten in time of possession. So limit turnovers, keep the ball on the ground. This game should be close right down to the wire, and I want the points in my pocket. I lean Minnesota for today's big game breakdown.
All right, Jimmy, great stuff there. And we've got 3 best bets coming your way here. And a quick reminder, if you do happen to have any questions about this week's slate of games, any of the games they're talking about here, just drop them in the comment section, as Steve, Jimmy, and Jeff will be keeping an eye on the comment section and will respond to any questions you guys might have about any of the games on the Week 8 slate. So go ahead, drop us those questions in the comments as we start back up at the top of the lineup as Steve Merrill ready to roll here for a best bet. And Steve, you're looking in the SEC for a best bet here. So talk to us, man. What do you got for a best bet this week between Auburn and Mississippi?
Just a couple quick reminders. First, my college football top 25 video is loaded here on Wager Talk TV, and my NFL Fade the Public video will be up on Friday as well. Hit subscribe, hit the bell for instant alerts so you never miss when those are posted. And also check out my personal best bets, including daily free plays on my page, Steve Merrill, wagertalk.com. We have 7-day, 30-day, and 365-day all sport, all access promos for you this week at special prices. So whether you want a week, a month, or a year, you can get it right now on my page, Steve Merrill, wagertalk.com. All right, a free play for this Saturday evening at 7 o'clock Eastern in the SEC. Let's take a look at Auburn plus the 6.5. Now, would really like to get a +7. It's such a key number. But either way, we're taking the value because my database simulation, 10,000 games run through the database, on average, has Ole Miss only winning this game by 3.5 points. I run other simulations as well. Several of them have Auburn winning the game outright. Several other simulations has Auburn winning the yardage edge in this game and outstanding Ole Miss also. So this is a definition of a live dog. Good defensive dog as well. Auburn's allowing just 23 points a game, below 6 yards per play against a tough schedule of opponents. And I also like the fact they run the ball well, nearly 200 rushing yards a game. almost 5 yards per carry. So this is what we call a live underdog, and we get some value on top of it. Take a look at the Auburn Tigers, currently plus 6.5. Not sure we'll get to that key number of 7, but at plus 6, 6.5, definitely plenty of line value still with Auburn as a live dog here. And don't forget, first-year head coach Hugh Freeze taking on his former Ole Miss squad. He hasn't been there since 2016 when he left with some baggage, to say the least. But I think he probably has his game circled. And then on top of that, Ole Miss, maybe a little bit of momentum breaker, having a bye week last week after those back-to-back wins. I think it's a good setup for the live home dog Auburn on Saturday night. And don't forget, if you want my official best bets this weekend in college and pro football, go get them right now at wagertalk.com and consider an all sports, all access subscription. 7-day, 30-day, and 365-day passes are available right now with special promo codes and discounted prices this week only. Steve Merrill, wagertalk.com.
All right, Merrill, thank you very much for that. And Jeff Michaels, you're going to head over to the MAC for your best bet here, my man. Miami of Ohio taking on Toledo. How should we be betting this game?
I spent a little bit of time down there in Oxford, actually attending Miami of Ohio. But hey, this is some football out of Oxford that we haven't seen in years, to say the least. Miami is sitting at a home dog right now against this Toledo team, who people really thought could potentially run away with this conference at the beginning of the year, or at least be competing with a team more likely other than Miami at this point. But right now, both these two teams sit at 6-1 atop their respective side of the MAC. And both teams lost their opener in a game that they probably should have lost. Miami of Ohio started the season against Miami of Florida, and Toledo started their season against Big Ten Illinois. But you negate those games and look at what they've done in the last 6 weeks. Both of these teams are 6-0 straight up. Miami's winning by over 20 points per game, and Toledo's winning by over 19 points per game. But where the difference really comes into play here, look at those ATS margins and against the spread numbers, and it shows you really how they're competing against the level of competition. Miami, not only are they 6-0 in their last 6 games, but they've covered all 6 of those games as well, covering by 10 points per game on average and being a 10-point favorite on average as well. So definitely covering some big numbers there. Toledo, I threw out the Texas Southern game that they played week 2. They were sitting at 40.5-point favorites. In the last 5 weeks for Toledo, they haven't covered a game against the spread, and they're failing to cover that number by almost a touchdown. Granted, they have been a little bit bigger of a favorite than Miami has been in those situations, but the strength of schedule is nearly identical. The defense is relatively similar. Toledo's got the edge in pass defense. Miami has the edge in rush defense and scoring defense, but this Miami defense here, what they've done, just hold 120 yards below the offensive season average of conference opponents. They've covered all 3 conference games, and 120 yards below the average ranks 12th in the nation against conference opponents. They got a big test on their hand, obviously. Toledo's offense, on the other side of that stat, they're putting up 135 yards above what opposing defenses are allowing in conference play, which is inside the top 10, but they have failed to cover a single conference game this year. They're 0-3 against the spread. And when you're playing teams in the MAC, I do like looking at the MAC. Obviously, being in Ohio, I'm surrounded by MAC opponents. And home field advantage doesn't always seem like the biggest thing here, because you got teams that are traveling, fan bases that are traveling. But Miami and Toledo, the home team is 6-1 straight up and against the spread in the last 7 years. So there is definitely a home field advantage here, looking at about 3 hours of drive time. So one of the farther separations between Ohio teams, but being able to cover the number 6 straight weeks and being able to cover it by a hefty margin, really shows what Miami has been able to do here, and really kind of shows that they may be undervalued whereas Toledo may be overvalued a little bit. The expectations were high and they haven't quite lived up to it, not living up to those spread numbers. Now they come on the road, and Miami's just a dog for the third time this season in 7 games, which is something they were very familiar with prior to this season. So I'm going to take the home dog here. I am going to take the 1.5. I think it's going to be a close game, but I like Miami at home against Toledo this weekend, getting that 1.5.
Great stuff, Jeff. Thanks so much for that. And last but definitely not least, Jimmy Adams here. One more best bet to talk about. And you're going to head back to the Big 12 for us with the newcomer, UCF, huh? Central Florida taking on the big bad Oklahoma Sooners here. 18-19, I'm seeing OU as a favorite. What are we doing in this matchup here?
Both teams coming off a bye. Important for both for different reasons. Shouldn't be much of a letdown for OU. They've now had 2 weeks to kind of come down off that high of beating Texas in the Red River rivalry. Sooners currently rank 6th in the nation in total offense, averaging 506 total yards, 6.7 yards per play. However, it's really the defensive side of the ball that's made all the difference this season under Brent Venables, coming in at 7th overall in scoring defense while giving up just 14 points per game. Now, you're going to see that UCF has some pretty good numbers offensively, and it helps when you get to play Kent State, Boise State, and Villanova to start the season. Inflated numbers there. Big 12 play has not been good to UCF. They've lost all 3 conference games while getting outscored by a combined 42 to Kansas and K-State alone. John Reese Plumlee is expected to start, and he has not fared well in Power 5 competition in his career. In 3 games in 2022, just a 53.5% completion percentage, and it gets even worse if you want to go farther back than that when he played at Ole Miss. The Golden Knights have some serious problems on defense, especially when it comes to stopping the run. They're allowing almost 200 yards per game on the ground. Oklahoma quarterback Dylan Gabriel also used to play for UCF, so he'll be fired up for this game. OU also 6-0 against the spread. They've covered in every game this season. The Sooners have the college football playoff right in front of them. The schedule is not difficult from here on out. As long as they play near to their level of expectation, they're going to be just fine. I think they do so here. Lay the points with Oklahoma for this week's best bet.
All right, thanks, Jimmy. And there you got it. 3 big game breakdowns, couple of favorites, couple of underdogs. But we've got so much more still coming your way here in this week 8 of the college football season. We've got more game previews, more best bets. All you have to do is just hit that video and click on that video on the screen right now, and you'll have access to all the top 25 videos we got coming up this week, along with all the best bets. And make sure you come back and join us again tomorrow for another edition of the College Football Kickoff Show. Best of luck with all your plays this week. We'll talk to you again soon.